Hey, welcome back to another exciting episode of Spell Storm Miniatures. My name is Jeremiah.
And I'm Chad.
And we are flying without Dan today, but we're still going to have a good episode for you to listen to. And I'm actually pretty excited about today's topic. The topic has to deal with what do you do when thinking about starting a new game? And, you know, that's something that many of us have done and do and still do. And
yeah. And and we've also been talking about some other games as we've become aware of some other games recently. So it's a fresh topic that's on our minds.
That's right. And so, so I'm excited to have that conversation. But before we get there, one of the things we like to do is talk about games that we played and just maybe share a highlight or something about those games. And have you played any games lately?
The only games that I've been able to get in was I had a full day basically of nothing but Commander. So July 3rd, I went over to a buddy of mine, Robert, who's actually been part of the War Machine community for a long time. That's how I met him. But he and I have birthdays in June. My roommate Justin and my other really good friend from high school, Jeremy, have birthdays in May. So we did kind of a combined birthday, 4th of July hangout day on July 3rd. Nice. And we did a sealed Commander Legends game where it was just 4 of us. We had 8 packs of Commander Legends. We opened them up. And then from our pool made a 60 card Commander deck and then played a game with them. That was a ton of fun. Nice. I had a lot of different options and I wasn't sure which direction to go, but I ended up going with, I can't remember the name of the legendary creature, but it's it's like a Naga, or I think it's a Naga Shaman. It's a 3/1 and it has Cascade, and then it has a passive ability of your spells with CMC 6 or more have Cascade. So I built this whole deck, this whole blue-green deck about like being able to cascade into other bigger spells and getting free spells and drawing lots of cards and stuff. So That's a ton of fun. After that, this is also the event where, I don't remember if I talked about it on here, probably not, but we did a budget Commander deck construction kind of dare between the 4 of us, because my friend Robert was complaining about making a budget deck for Commander that was less than $100, and Jeremy and I were like, $100, like just stop using good lands. Like, just there's plenty of lands that tap for multiple colors. He's like, yeah, but they interplay tapped, and we're like, oh come on, like you have to sacrifice speed for money. Like if you're trying to get it under a budget, you can't always have the fast lands or shocks or other things. So I made 2 decks. I think I was the only one that made 2 decks, and then everyone else made 1. We played a couple of games of that. It was a lot of fun. Neither one of my decks did very well. Mostly because my artifact deck just got targeted. There was a board wipe that hit that left me with 1 creature, my commander, who was very big, who ended up being a 14/14 after the board wipe. And that's a very scary target. And my friend Jeremy, who built a pirate deck on a budget, promptly started stealing people's creatures and then punching them with it. So I died to my own commander quickly. My other one was a black-white angel deck. It was good in theory, but I was just a little bit slow on lands. So I couldn't quite get going. And I felt like my board state kept getting targeted because I had like nothing but flyers. We had lunch. Robert cooked some burgers, and then we played just with some of our constructed decks, did a little trading and hung out. It was really great. It was a really great day where we were sitting around talking about Commander and playing for like about a good 10 hours. And it was just really nice. Things have been kind of stressful recently for me. I'm not really a fan of my birthday. So,
Sorry. I mean, I know
well,
you have one every year, but I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. I mean, that's what happens when it's what happens when you start getting older. You stop becoming a fan of your birthday. Um, but that was nice to be able to hang out with those guys. And Jeremy and
Yeah,
I have been friends. Jeremy and I have been friends since high school. Um,
that's cool.
so it was good to see him and hang out with him for a long time and play some games and stuff. So those were my only games. While I was doing that, unfortunately, I did give up my spot for my every other weekend of wargaming with another small group from guys in our community. Richard, Matt, and a couple other guys started doing something, so I had to miss that in place of playing Commander. But that's coming up again this weekend, so I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to playing some minis games.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. We've been playing a lot of Flesh and Blood at our house. And what's very interesting is my wife, Laura, she's not so keen on card games and war games, but she'll play board games with us,
Mhm.
and but for whatever reason, she's been agreeable to playing the multiplayer format of Flesh and Blood.
Okay.
And so we'll get one time we even got a 4-player game with Bryce and Laura and Oz and me. And so Oz is really happy right now because he's getting a lot of Flesh and Blood in. Um, most of my games have been with pre-constructed decks, and so just kind of getting the feel for the game and getting the feel for how each hero plays.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually broke down a few of them, and then I built a wizard deck, and I can't remember the name of the. I think that it starts with an M. The name of the hero starts with an M, but I built the wizard deck, and I built it. And the way you can build a deck is you can build the deck to fit multiple formats.
Mm-hmm.
The standard size can also work for the multiplayer format with a couple tweaks, and you just use the young hero version instead of the mature version.
Mm-hmm.
So Oz beat me pretty handily, I think, on one of the games, as per usual. But then, and I think it was the first game we played with that deck, and then the second game, I think I figured it out. And because the wizard is so strong, it just does direct damage. He even begins the game with fewer life points than all the other heroes.
Yeah.
And just to compensate for his power, And so I just went yard on him, and I finally figured out like how the deck is supposed to work, and he was not very happy. So, but that's what happened. So, but yeah. Anyway, enjoying the game, and we're gonna get some more in, I'm sure. But
Is a small side question. Have you
yeah,
guys ever done any like deck builders with Laura? Is she just kind of not interested in any sort of like card based game like
oh,
that, or is it
no,
strictly TCGs?
she is just TCG. She loves deck
Okay.
builders. We have the DC deck builder, the Lord of the Rings deck builder. We have Dominion. We have Star Quest, Star Realms.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I mean, we have tons of deck builders at home that she'll play with and enjoy.
Okay.
Um,
I know
so
some people are just like completely opposed to like any sort of
yeah,
card based game or anything like that. And like one of our regulars said that his girlfriend was completely opposed to deck builders of any kind, but she absolutely loves Disney villainous. And he was just like, I'm just not gonna tell you that this is a deck builder, basically.
yeah, until the right time, and then you can expand the
Yeah,
the
and
game.
we're like, yeah, all those games that you dislike, this is basically it.
Yeah. Well, I think what makes Flesh and Blood a little bit different than other card games is that it has like just modern rules design. Just
Yeah,
the fact that any card can be used for at least 4 different purposes,
yeah,
and it's just and the art's pretty, and also it's something that Oz is interested in. And so I think Laura's motivated to want to try to get more Oz time. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, you're hogging him all the time.
yeah, I probably, but Oz and I got a chance to get together with Harry and Arthur for a day of War Machine, and so they had a couple tables set up, and we just went over there, brought some donuts, and they made coffee for us, and we decided that we would just randomly pair up, but not play father son or father versus son and father versus son.
Yeah.
So we basically split it up. So and so it ended up being father versus father and son versus son. And I was playing Veil 2 and Oracles, um, and Harry was playing Wormwood and Bones. And I don't think I've ever faced off against Wormwood. And so I was very intrigued with the vectors that they have, because Cassius can run out somewhere and he can channel through Cassius, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I felt real, and I was really afraid of the Hellmouth spell for some reason.
It's an incredibly good spell.
It is. Well, and here's the thing. My list was I heavily skewed all my minions as possible. I ran very little actual Legion stuff in the list because I was trying something out. I wanted to stress test the idea, my recursion idea. And so I had all these single wound models just running out there, and Hellmouth, a single Hellmouth spell could easily just eliminate, half the unit, and stuff. And
Yeah.
so,
Well, and if you're also leaning on recursion of your own guys, Hellmouth removes from play. So
exactly. So the Mage Bite doesn't come back.
Yeah.
So,
that's real dangerous.
I was real afraid of it. So turn one, I played real timidly, but I got as many guys out there as I could in such a way that he was not able to cast a good Hellmouth spell. And so I did good, and it caused him a little bit of stress. But what it did for the later turns was it prevented me from getting, like, my second wave just came too slow. And so the big highlight for me was I had half of my Croak Raiders got wiped out, and so I had about a half a unit left. And he had the Malvin and Mayhem model kind of in the center of the table. And so I just walked over, oil gourded him, and then almost took him out. He was full strength, and then brought him down to just a couple boxes. And then I was able to charge him with another model, and kill him. And so that made me really happy. And it made me able to focus on the like threats, because with Geomancy, his wolves can cast, or like Stranglehold, for example, and stuff. And so but Malvin and Mayhem, if that model was able to just run Ruckshot all over me, I wouldn't be able to control like anything. And so I removed something at least, and then was able to kind of focus my energy. The biggest issue was the turn that I could have gone for assassination. It was the turn he feeded, and Wormwood's armor was at the 21, and so I chose not to. But unfortunately, I left my Scythian just within range of one of my Croak Raiders. And so he Hellmouthed the Croak Raider, pulled the Scythian in, and then pulled his Warbeast in. And what it really did was it pulled his Warbeast forward.
Yep.
And then that created an assassination vector for him to get on Veil. Had that Hellmouth not gone off, Veil would have been perfectly safe, and then I would have assassinated the following turn, possibly. But I would have had a chance. And so Anyway, it was a great game,
Yeah.
and Harry's great to play with. So
Did he have any Sentry Stone and mannequins in the list?
yes, he did, and I eliminated one relatively quickly in the game, and then the other one, I kept getting rid of the mannequins, but I couldn't get to the stone, and so he kept bringing one back every turn.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, his sprays were getting me too. So
Yeah.
but
Well, I'll have to talk to him about some tricks because, especially like using Sentry Stone and mannequins, you don't care if the mannequins die. You can use them as hellmouth targets and just walk your dude wherever you want it to be.
yeah,
It just has to stay in formation because you're not allowed to target something out of formation with a spell, even an offensive one like that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting list. Being
Oh,
able to
it's fun.
geomancy strangleholds on war beasts that can't frenzy is really good, and getting access to megalith in that list is also really good. So
Yeah.
for a long time, Wormwood wasn't allowed in that list because it was black clad circle warlocks only. And then I had forgotten that they lifted that restriction. So now any circle warlock can play in it.
Nice.
Which I guess also makes my I had built a bones list with Chromac 1, where the only living war beast in the list is Getorix. But I haven't got to put it on the table, but it seemed like a fun list.
Well, maybe we can do that sometime. But
Yeah.
my biggest takeaway from that game was my stress test. Like I intentionally just loaded the list with the minion models that I had, and I think that the Gatorman Boker and Bogtrog Swamp Scramblers don't really fit. The whole idea was recursion stuff, but the recursion mechanic for the Boker and the Scramblers is different. It uses corpses instead of
Yeah.
and they're undead, and so the incubi can't come in. So I'm already back to the drawing board on the list, but it's good because without skewing so heavily and then doing the stress test, I wouldn't have really known. In addition, also they're slow. They're only speed 5, and they can't really keep up with like the Croak Raiders, which have advanced deploy. And
Yeah.
then if I include the NIS Hex Hunters, they have advanced deploy with Bale.
Yeah.
So it's like they have to come out, which is awesome because then it'll free up other things for me. So
Yep.
but I love War Machine, and it felt so good to play, and then it felt so good to be able to test an idea, find out that it didn't work exactly how I thought it was going to work, and then redo the idea. Like that's what I love about this game so much. So
Yep.
yeah.
Did Oz end up winning his game, or did Arthur beat him?
Yeah, Arthur got in. I think so. Texas had feeded and did a lot of work, and then and then what was not in the feet zone area, I think, was Lattimore, and so Lattimore was able to do something that Oz, I don't think, anticipated. But at the end of that round, like all of their entire armies were just face to face in the center of the table, duking it out. It was pretty epic. So, yeah. So, but I think so. Yeah. So the Harry and Arthur both won their games, and Oz and I both lost ours. So
Yeah.
yeah. Right.
Well, it sounds like a fun time though.
It was great. It was so good. I think we're gonna try to maybe do it again, and then maybe start a little bit earlier or something, and get a couple games in instead of just one.
Yeah.
So
play on a clock, it'll make you faster.
oh yeah. Well, I prefer to play on the clock, but we were just going casual. It's our first game back, so yeah. So well, hey, I think our topic today is pretty exciting. Talking about starting a new game, and recently we've started new games, and so wanted to know, like, what's one of the first things that you do when you think about starting a new game? And I think for context, I'm thinking about specifically starting a war game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I kind of figured.
yeah. Yeah.
um, since it's most of what we do, or at least a lot of what we keep our eye on.
Yeah.
Um, and usually, one of the first things that I do whenever I'm looking at a new game is looking at the models and seeing if there's anything that really draws me to them. There have been kind of some exceptions to this with like Song of Ice and Fire. I had heard that it was, or I guess I found out that it was actually a miniatures game. And I was already really interested in the IP. We talked about this before. I've read the books, I've watched the show. I was really interested in the Song of Ice and Fire lore and everything like that. And so once I heard that there was a game and heard that there were people interested in getting into it, that's kind of what it is that drew me into it. But usually the first thing I do is start looking at the models and seeing if I am really interested in them, if it's something I could see myself enjoying looking at, because that's kind of one of the important things, at least in my opinion, when you're playing them in these games, you want to enjoy the pieces that you're looking at on the table.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's true for me as well. My introduction to new games comes in the form of it being mentioned on a podcast or a YouTube video, or someone I know mentions the game, or I see it on the shelf at the store.
Mm-hmm.
Although doesn't happen as often because a lot of the stores in our area tend to carry very similar limited product, right? And so, because those are the products that move, random obscure miniature games aren't going to move, and so it makes sense. I'm not faulting the stores, but so one of the first things I do, because I don't usually see it on the table being played, is I'll go online to the website, I'll Google it, I'll find, and I'll poke around on the either the publisher's site or the creator site if they don't have a designated site for that game, and I do the same thing with you. I look at the models and stuff. So I also, when I'm doing that, I'm also kind of looking at prices, and I'm looking at how the game is packaged.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you get like, are there starter bundles that you can get, or are there like single faction bundles for like a starter box, or like full army boxes? If you get, and I'm a big book guy, so if you buy one of those bundles or if you buy one of those starter products, what do you get a full rule set with it?
Yeah.
Or like one of the games that I started during the pandemic was Conquest, and you can get the starter for it, and they had a 2-player starter, and then eventually they released kind of like a faction starter.
Yeah.
And the rule set that you got was a paperback version, the A4 size paperback version. But of course, I wanted the nice, pretty hardbound.
Yeah.
That also has the lore, and because I like to look at it on my bookshelf, it's pretty.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there are other games though where when you buy the starter, you get a full rule book, So those are things that I think about when I start a new game. What else do you do?
The second thing I would usually start looking at, or at least thinking about, is how much interest there is in the game. Because, I've been a part of the War Machine community for so long. I got into the game because a couple of my buddies, I got a demo game from my friend from high school's older brother that used to work at Guardian Games a long time ago, gave me my first demo game of War Machine. And at the time, my friend and another friend of mine were also interested in getting into it. And so the three of us were looking at getting into this game. They had already started getting models, and I decided to dip my toe into it. And at the time, I was looking to play, I wanted to play something competitive, but I didn't want to try and get into competitive Magic and paying the rotating costs and things like that. Having no idea that miniatures games were just as expensive or sometimes more expensive. But that's something I learned later. But the amount of usage that I've got out of my models, the number of people and community that I've learned or that I've met playing War Machine, and I still have all of my circle models. I still have everything I own from when I started 12 years ago. But that's the other thing is like getting into the community, learning people in the community, and expanding the community and enjoying it with other people. Bringing new people into the game is one of the things that I enjoy. And it's fun to hang out with some people and just talk about the game that you're playing or the new one that you're interested in. So that's one of the other things that I really look at, because there's, a couple of different miniatures games that have caught my eye before, or other games in general that have caught my eye before, but I just don't know enough people interested to justify the cost of getting into it. Or the other kind of flip side to that is, how easy is it to provide enough stuff for other people to play?
Right.
Like
before we get to that point, I do want to just capitalize on what you just shared. One of the things that's very important for me is there opportunity to get a demo game in, and that speaks a lot. Most of the games that I play that stick are games that I got a demo game in from someone that I knew. And even games that have stuck, demo games from someone who I didn't know, but the demo game is so crucial to doing the things that you just talked about. Building community and introducing the game to people. So, and there's ways to do that, and that's the point that you're going into right now, I think.
Is how easy is it to get enough stuff to be able to teach other people or play with other people in a semi-board game style? Is like, I've got this one minis game. Example is I'm collecting all of the Riot Quest stuff. And Riot Quest, you can use the miniatures in War Machine, even though I don't own all of the factions that all of the miniatures get used in. I'm still collecting everything. That way, if, some people wanted to play, but not everyone has stuff or not everyone is aware of it, I've got everything that you need. I've got all of the mats. I've got all of the heroes that I'm working on getting fully painted. I've gotten the expansions that have like the spawning gates or the treasure chests and stuff like that. So that's kind of one of the other things. That one's like a little bit unique because I was already playing War Machine, and there's models I can use in there, and I'm a Privateer fanboy. So, but something similar to that actually is, I was thinking about getting into God Tier a while ago. I've been thinking about it for a while, but I didn't know enough other people that were interested in playing. I was planning to kind of slowly start purchasing into it this year, and then someone else in our community, who Wes, actually provided an opportunity for me. He said, "Hey, I've got all this stuff from the Kickstarter. With my family recently moved out of the area. I don't really have anyone to play with. I'm not really interested in it anymore. Do you want to do a trade? Like, I'm looking for some Gene Stealer cult stuff. Would you be interested in purchasing those for me? And then we can trade." And so I'm actually going to be doing that here shortly and getting, the first 14 heroes, I think it is, for God Tiers, which is going to be more than enough to have, myself and somebody else have some options to play.
Yeah, all the things. Yeah, I think that's awesome. That's one of the things that I like about, for going back to the first point, the 2-player starter boxes as opposed to the faction specific ones. So one of my most favorite wargaming podcasts of all time, they had done like several episodes several years ago where they were just talking about their hobby desk, and every episode for like 4 or 5 in a row they were talking about this game, Drop Zone Commander. and then they would elaborate a little bit on the game and things like that. But that was a game that I really, really wanted to play, and based on what I was hearing from them on the podcast. And so when I found a 2-player starter, oh, I snapped that up really quickly.
Yeah.
And then I even took the time to introduce a friend, and I was going to expand on it and things like that. Um, but that game was actually deeper than I had expected it to be. So, and yeah, so, but yeah, I think if you're going to do demos, I think you got to have a good mastery of the game. Yeah, and be able to,
or at least a good understanding of like kind of the basics, and then have a rule book handy. Like, don't be afraid to look up rules if you're unclear on something or something like that. But that's a whole nother topic of teaching. But so the other,
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the other thing that I started looking at in a game is kind of the mechanics of the game, the rules for it, how the game seems to flow, the way that the models start working and interacting together. And this is kind of the point where I get more invested in it. And I start really thinking about even more, the step before this, where how many people are interested in it. Because by this point, like, the fish hook is in and it's starting to get reeled. And I'm just, trying to figure out, I'm trying to justify to myself, like, even more if I like the rule set. But a lot of it still kind of comes back to, even if I like the rule set, if I'm not really a fan of the models, it's still a little harder for me to get into it. Looking at cool models or looking at pretty models is kind of a big hinge that I hang on.
Yeah. Pretty models with nice rules is way better than ugly models with nice rules.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, there's a lot of great games out there, and there are some that seem to have just they just really master their aesthetic, and so when you start poking around the different factions, it's pretty easy for me to find something that I like and would enjoy painting.
Because that's the big thing is, like, you and we're both hobbyists. We paint our miniatures, and like, I want to be excited to paint whatever it is that I have. Like, I don't want it to sit gray, because I like the look of painted models on the table. Personally, I like having my stuff painted. It's one of my major goals that I've been working through, is getting more stuff painted. And if I'm not excited about painting the model, it's hard to do the work, especially with all the other stuff I have going on. It's hard to find that time to do it if you're not excited about the project.
Yeah. On the subject of game mechanics too, like, that's a part of the game that I like as well. And so sometimes, like, I'll hang on to a game just because it's different enough that, so when I play it, it's a fresh break, So I really enjoy Malifaux. I think Malifaux is a deep game, and it's great. And the fact that it uses cards, and that there's a little bit of the ability to sort of control your fate a little bit. I think that's a fun element to the game that doesn't exist when you're playing with dice games. So.
And it's a very unique experience too, because there is still also the bluffing aspect of the game a little bit.
And some people are really good at that.
Yeah.
Others wear our hearts on their sleeves and can't lie with the darn.
Well, maybe you'd be a little bit better at bluffing once, like, you get the mechanics down of the game a little bit more, you play a little bit more of it. When you're new to a game, especially a game like that, where you're looking at what your potential ability, tips, tipping an ability when it's kind of a showdown like that, where you're like, okay, I play this card to make sure this effect works, and someone is like, okay, I'm going to play this to try and make it not work. When you're not certain about the types of things you should be looking for or holding on to play, you're going to be asking a lot of questions of like, oh, I drew an 8 of this suit. Is it good to hold on to this, even though it's not like the suit that empowers my faction, and that type of thing.
Yeah. That's a game that we got to put on the table too.
So this is kind of a little bit sidestep to it, but like, what games have you looked at recently that you've started applying these steps to?
Yeah. So one of the games that I'm interested in trying out is called Arena Rex, and it's been on my list of things to try. And then one of our listeners reached out to me and mentioned that it's on their list of things to try. And so on the same day, we both purchased our 3-man starter box or whatever. And what was interesting was the decision process that we both went through. We were messaging each other privately on Discord, and they chose a faction that looked really interesting to me, but obviously I couldn't choose that faction. Had that faction been available to me, I probably would have. But so then I had to go through the process of figuring out which models looked second best to me,
Yeah.
And in the end, I think I'm pleased with the faction that I chose. And I know you're probably going to ask me what I chose, but so I'm gonna Google that right now, because honestly, I bought it and it came, but I haven't even opened it yet. So there were just some other things kind of going on, and so yeah, I'm on their website right now, and I'll try to figure out what I purchased in a second. But what about you?
There's been a couple of different ones for me. One of the ones that I recently started getting into was Age of Sigmar. I've always been a really big fan of fantasy. Always thought it was really cool. The factions in Age of Sigmar, a lot of them look really awesome. And when I was starting to look into it, I really liked the look of some of the Soulblight Gravelord stuff, the early things that we started seeing, the vampire lords and the undead armies, because playing the malignants or the undead, like Legions of Nagash and things, had interested me before. And then as I decided to kind of pull the trigger, there's a bunch of different stuff in Age of Sigmar that looks super cool.
Yeah.
So I decided what I was going to do instead of just picking what looks the coolest, was actually read through kind of some faction overviews of what play styles and how they worked and things like that, and decided to settle on Daughters of Cain. One, the models look super cool. Marathi and her Shadow Queen form, the giant snake wing with wings, or the giant, I guess, Medusa kind of with wings, is a fantastic model. It's a gorgeous model. But they kind of they fit my play style a little bit better, of being very fast, very, very strong. They want to hit hard and be maneuverable, which is the way that I like playing my miniatures games. It's part of the reason why I play Circle. I always come back to playing Circle in War Machine and Hordes. It was the reason why I picked Starks when I played Song of Ice and Fire. I like maneuverability, and learning to play with a faction that is very glass cannon, where they hit really hard but they're fragile, and they kind of fit that aesthetic, or they fit that play style a little bit better.
Yeah, Age of Sigmar is a great game, and of all the games that I play or have played, I probably have faction hopped more in that game than any other, which is very interesting for me to make that observation. But you're right, playstyle matters too. just because the models are cool doesn't mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad that I ended up settling on them because I'm not really a fan of some of the other Soulblight Gravelord models that they've released, like um the Bat Centaur vampires. Like I'm just not really a big fan of the aesthetic that they went for that or some of the other ones.
Yeah.
So it kind of worked out.
Yeah. Here, I found the starter set that I purchased for Arena Rex.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Morituri, the Royal Ludus of Egyptus, the Morituri. I'm obviously pronouncing these words wrong, so please forgive me. But the Morituri elevate and twist the Munera far beyond the scope of anything Roman, believing these sacred funerary games not only honor the fallen, but have the power to breach the boundaries of the afterlife. The Morituri eternally prepare for the next royal Munera to aid in the restoration of their divine rulers. The Morituri aesthetic features the opulence of the pharaonic tomb, zealous and exotic warriors, and a dark fascination with death. So, there's a little bit of an Egyptian theme,
Yeah.
Pharaoh kind of in their modeling, um, and I mean it's Arena Rex. It's supposed to be like gladiators fighting in the center of a ring, and it's going to be a brutal game anyway. So their dark fascination with death is fine as long as they exact death on their opponents and not on me. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. But yeah, so it looks like that to get into Arena Rex, you just the starter sets each come with 3 models, and the Muratari looked the best to me. I really have 3 very distinct looking soldiers. So yeah.
Well, the other thing too, this is I don't know about you and Dan, but we were recently talking about Rain in Hell. We mentioned, I think, on the podcast before, or at least between the 3 of us.
Yeah.
This is a game that the 3 of us have been interested in and decided to start getting into. That kind of breaks the rules that we set in place for, not really the rules, the steps, because it's a model agnostic system. And so they
Right.
have models that they show in their little introduction video that they talk about, but you can use any models as per the nature of model agnostic things. So, what about it kind of drew you to it?
So I think 2 things. One is because I really enjoy reading rules and rule books. One of the things that I want to do eventually in the hobby side of things is I want to create my own game. And so the thing that drew me to Rain in Hell was not its theme. I mean, it's fine, it's fresh, it's a fresh take on the whole death thing, but but the fact that they reduced the stat line to 3 primary stats, so the game is very simplistic in that sense, and I mean when you think about your what you do on the battlefield, you move, you do some sort of action, and you have a certain amount of life before you get removed from the battlefield. And so to be able to reduce the stats of those 3 things, and then whatever your stat is suggests how well or how long you live, right? And so I just that part of the rules was interesting. It also uses a different die that isn't used very often, the D12, and so those kinds of things just kind of piqued my interest. And honestly, it was a cheap purchase. It's an inexpensive game. I already have models, obviously, that I can use for the game. So, yeah. What about you?
I had, I think, mentioned recently about wanting to try or being interested in some other model agnostic games. it was one that we talked about. It seemed like an interesting idea. I hadn't really looked at the rules because I was having trouble finding any sort of like how to play or rules breakdown or anything like that. I was looking around on their website, and I think it's only about $10 for the PDF, and then it's like $15 for a softcore rulebook, and like $4.50 shipping or something like that. So I just decided to spring for it because it's a cheap investment, and I already own models. So I mean, at the worst, if I don't like it, I'm out $20, which is not really that big of a deal. It's pretty low investment for a lot of miniatures games. So the only drawback was I started thinking about. I was like, oh man, what if I did like a werewolf like faction where it was all about the predatory nature of like creatures, and like the hunter's instinct is the thing that kind of drives the group of demons that I'm going to be playing. And recently, Creature Caster just paired with Novak Studios.
Okay.
It's Novak something Studios. It's another miniatures company, and released some very, very cool looking werewolf sculpts. There's the wolf, which is supposed to be kind of the leader model. He's on a 40mm base. It looks like he was like broken out of shackles. He's got a bunch of like swords and spears like jabbed in his back, like he's just angry and like charging. And then there's another 4 or 5 werewolves that they did that are supposed to be like the pack. Those are all like 30mm ones. And I was thinking about maybe getting those, but it's a little bit more of a money investment for those models than I'm interested in doing right now. But I thought they were super cool. I have other werewolf models that I can use from War Machine. I'm thinking about just using probably my skinwalkers from Circle, because they're anthropomorphic. They're werewolves basically. They're only on 40mm base, and I don't know if we figured out what the suggested base sizing is for Reign in Hell.
Yeah, they give you a few different things, because you can, depending on the base size, will depend on how that model interacts on the table.
Okay.
And so
like leader models are probably going to be bigger. The Herald is probably going to be slightly smaller, and your little like devout like grunt guys are probably going to be smaller than that.
Yeah. So one of the things that's interesting, you kind of are alluding to us doing something as a podcast, and we won't make the formal announcement today about it, but I was just poking around, and some of the scenarios that they have for the game are multiplayer.
Okay.
So, like I'm looking at the Beast right now, and it's rules for 4 players. And I love that. So, but yeah, you're right. As we kind of wrap up this topic, maybe the minis agnostics games break all the rules that we've kind of established for starting a new game.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of minis agnostics games that I'm very interested in trying, and I have minis to repurpose for those games, and it's not a big deal. You got terrain and things, but like, what is it that catches your eye for those things? And for me, one of them is the cost, and then the other two would be presentation. Like, how does it show up? What does it look like? And like those Austria books are really easy. Like learning how to play Frostgrave, for example, such an easy game to learn.
Yeah.
And that part of that is Joseph McCullough's rules writing, but the other is presentation of the rules. It's very chronological in the sense of you start on page 1, and by the end, you're done, you're ready,
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I can't imagine a store though, like like your local friendly game store, like having a library of these rules agnostic games, because there's so many of them, and some of or minis agnostic games, excuse me, and some of them like they really can spark interest and sell great, like Frostgrave, but then others can just kind of sit on the shelf for years before anybody like one of the ones is Tomorrow's Edge, I think. is the name of it, or no, Edge Reality. Edge is in the title. I think those actually. I think I just named two different miniatures games there. But it was kind of like one of them was a futuristic. I think they're both futuristic, and one of them was a skirmish game that looked interesting, but like I never purchased the book. I would flip through it at the game store, and I would just kind of read pages at a time, but I never purchased it because I never saw myself building terrain and building a table for that.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, it came up recently. I was at work and somebody was asking me about getting into Warhammer 40K, and we were talking about it, and I was like, okay, well, like, let me ask you this before we kind of get really deeper into trying to figure out what faction you want. I was like, what is it that's drawing you to Warhammer 40K specifically? Is it just miniatures games or just this? And they're like, well, I mean, it's the only minis game that I know. I always thought it looked kind of cool, but I know that it could be expensive. And so I'm like kind of looking for something to invest time and money into. I was like, well, I mean, there's plenty of model agnostic games out there too. You could think about getting those. And so he actually ended up picking up the Stargrave rulebook that we had in stock.
Nice.
So I think that kind of piqued his interest, talking about, like, if you already have miniatures and you're not sure, because like, especially trying to get into 40K is kind of a cost investment. Yeah. But he was taking that because he already had rules, or he already had miniatures. I was talking to him about how, like, you could do multiplayer, but really, like, you could just do with two people. You could do anything for terrain. And then he was going to start doing some other research of, like, looking into the 40K factions and things like that to see if that was something he still wanted to pursue or not. So I think I'm going to talk to the store owner and try and bring back in some of the model agnostic. And now that we have like a couple more people working, I can step away a little bit more easily to talk to people about miniature games where I wasn't really able to before.
Yeah.
Small aside that was, but
well, that's good. You basically help someone go through the process that we were just talking about today. They were looking to start a new game, and I think that's probably if I had your job, that would be the task that I would have the most fun with.
Yeah.
I love introducing new players to things, and so yeah. Well, cool. Hey, you want to talk about what's like what you've been like purchasing and stuff?
Yeah, I was gonna say confession time, since we're talking about someone buying rule books. I mentioned earlier. I recently bought a couple of Gene Stealer cult models, a couple of the Goliath trucks, and a box of Adelan bikers to trade to Wes. Recently purchased or ordered the Reign in Hell rule book. Looking forward to getting that and cracking it open. Checking that out. Other than that, I haven't really. Well, I guess I did buy another unit of Ranger Fire Team for Warcaster, so that I have a second unit. Also convinced the store owner to requisition one of each of, excluding Empyreans, starter boxes for Warcaster, so that we could have some store demo stuff. And that's related to some other work things that I've been doing. I've been trying to set up some stuff in the display case to showcase some other miniatures games, which also, just kind of falls in line with this of introducing people to new games, pointing stuff out that looks cool, and doing some sort of a little display that showcases kind of the way that the game is supposed to play. I'm doing that with some other stuff as well. So those have been my purchases. I'm looking forward to getting all the stuff, adding a bunch more models to my pile of unpainted stuff that I'm trying to work through this year. I have a bad habit of doing that, but looking forward to getting all the stuff for God Tier, working on painting that eventually. I've got some other projects that are work related that I'm working on as well.
Nice. Yeah. I can say, since our last podcast, that I have purchased 0 new models.
Oh, snap.
That's a big deal. However, I have purchased a fair amount of Flesh and Blood packs, and then I did buy the General's Handbook for Age of Sigmar,
Yeah.
and because I do like the pretty nice rule book, I did buy the rule book as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, but um, I've got a few things that I've been eyeing for future purchases, but I haven't. Yeah, no new models though.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
a
you've
big
got
deal.
you've got the Riot Quest stuff to look forward to a little bit later in the fall for you and Oz to pick up for War Machine and
Yeah, I guess you can count that. I guess I did buy those, didn't I?
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Hey, what are you building? What are you painting?
I actually did get some painting done this weekend. I spent a lot of time hanging out at home and trying to work on some projects and do a little cleanup in my room and my hobby space, actually. Cleaning and reorganizing slightly. So I decided to take a break from some of the 40K stuff I was painting,
Hmm.
um, and started working on some of the War Machine Hordes models that I had left over from last year. And so I recently painted my extra unit of Druids of Orboros plus their unit leader. Um, got those done, yes, a couple days ago. And then I started working on some of the Riot Quest models, primarily the ones that come in the Wintertime Wasteland starter box, because I'm going to use those in a display case at the store. So trying to get them painted up nicely. I
Yeah, I
did
saw your Legion model. It looks nice.
Yeah, I did Ysilla yesterday, and then I
Yeah.
also painted up Stone Cold Black Bella. She's looking nice. I was actually just working on getting some color on Shivers right before we started recording, and man, that is a tiny model. And then I've got Yuri, the new Yuri model,
Nice.
sitting at my desk as well as a couple of Warcaster miniatures that I've got primed that I'm going to work on here eventually. But as I'm giving myself some more projects and stuff at work, I'm trying to work on getting those models painted for the display cases that I'm going to be, little dioramas I'm going to be creating for showcasing various minis games
Nice.
coming up here. So
Nice.
that's what I've been working on. Oh, I got a full unit of Retribution, Dawn Guard, and Victors assembled that I picked up from Mindtaker Miniatures. Showed up a couple of days ago. Showed up Friday. I grabbed it Saturday and got them assembled. That's for another demo army that I'm building for work.
Cool. Nice.
I'm going to paint white, even though I'm going to hate it.
Yeah. It's gonna improve your skill big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I built all of my remaining Skaven stuff, which was basically the Skaven endless spells, and then the gnaw holes. I've decided for my Skaven army that I'm going to play exclusive Clan Eshin, and
Mhm.
um, but now this means that I can start playing fancy stuff because I've been playing them without the endless spells, and so Oz has had a few advantages on over me because of that. But
Yeah.
and then and then I primed the endless spells, but I haven't primed the Nahals. And actually, the way the Nahals work is there's like a whirlpool, and it's probably a 5 inch diameter circle. It's not a solid perfect circle, but it's circular whirlpool that's surrounded by like rocks, and then built on top of that is a structure that makes the like the Skaven symbol out of wood. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
so what I was thinking about doing, I did not glue the wood structures into the base of the knot holes on purpose, because what I was thinking about doing was priming them two different colors and then painting them separately,
Yeah.
um, to make it cleaner, but also because I want to do a different technique for the knot holes. I want to try to make the knot holes glow a little bit, because they're supposed to be like where you can teleport through, and it's supposed to be like magical and stuff. So
Yeah.
but yeah. And then at the last paint party, I built all of my movement trays that I purchased for Ninth Age, and it occurred to me that I don't think I purchased the right sizes.
Oh no.
So I basically purchased a random amount from two different companies because I wanted to see what they looked like. And so one company has the lip. Then they come in pieces. They come in wood. All the wood comes in different pieces. You have to use wood glue, and you have to like sit there and hold them or clamp them down in some way. And so one of the companies, the lip goes around the entire perimeter or edge of the tray, and then the other company only has it around the front arc and then the two side arcs. And so what I want to do is get my Ninth Age army out and put them in the trays. One, to figure out which style I like, and then two, figure out which size I want. Because in the rule set, depending on if they're wider or if they're deeper, you get different bonuses. So like if you go like 2x5 versus 5x2, it's a different kind of unit,
Okay.
So, yeah. So and I'm new to rank and flank games that are like that. So so I didn't know exactly what to purchase when I bought the trays.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah. So good conversation today. It makes me want to go out and look at more games.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Hey, we have the paint party every Thursday, 8 p.m. and it kind of goes until the last person leaves. If anybody who's listening wants to join us, it's on our Discord server, and it's just a great time. And you don't have to stay for the whole time. You can come late and you can leave early. But the idea is to just build community and also help with accountability. Just getting our hobby time in. I know for me personally, it's something that I have marked in my calendar every week, and it's something I look forward to every week. So the other thing we have is the book club, and that's a monthly meeting. We meet on the last Sunday of the month in the afternoon, and we're taking turns reading fiction and rules, because we're nerds and we like to read all the things. This month we're reading the Conan RPG rulebook. And so you can pick that up. If you already have it, great. Or you can pick up a PDF of it on DriveThruRPG if you want. Or you can buy it from your local friendly. But that's what we're going to be talking about this month. And then we'll announce what next month's going to be. And then we won't announce what's coming. We'll only drop the teaser, but we're going to be doing something with Rain and Hell as a podcast. And so we're looking forward to that. So yeah, that's about it, right?
Very exciting. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
tum, tum.